Okay, welcome back. I'm just going to do the solution, kind of go over a little bit of the solution for lab part 2. Okay, so here we are. Have it in Eclipse. Okay, so you guys downloaded the CSV file. Should have put it underneath your project. Mine is just JW2, Java Workshop 2. We have our data file and then our CSV file, which if you double click on it, you can double click on it. Did you double click? If you double click on it, it will just open up Excel. Here, there's the bouncing X. It'll open up Excel and you can actually see the data. And you're going to see that there is tons and tons of data in this one CSV file, okay? Which is really more real world, right? Where you get lots and lots of data. Here we go. Look at all this data, like rows and rows of data, columns and columns of data. Though, notice how in our classes, we don't need all that data. We just want some of it, right? And this is very real world, where you're going to get all this data and you just need to parse out what you want. Okay, so that was the whole idea of it. Parsing it out, working with classes, all that kind of stuff. And there's certain fields in here which help us to determine what kind of information we want. Okay, so I'm going to close that. I'm just going to minimize it for now, and we'll go over that. So I am maybe a little bit different. I'm going to first work back. I showed you guys how to like select these guys, write, copy, and then you could paste, right? So some of you started really quickly by doing that. Okay, so here we have our vehicle. Here's our vehicle. Same as before. We have our make, model, year. What we did add, though, was this abstract class called get fuel type. And this, we're making it an abstract class so we don't have to define it, right? Because notice how I don't have a fuel type in here, right? I don't have a data member. I don't have an attribute called fuel type. But I have this method called get fuel type. Okay? And so basically I'm saying if you subclass me, you have to make sure and implement get fuel type. Okay? And so since I made this one method abstract, I've got to make the whole class abstract. Remember, abstract means you can't create an instance of it. So now I can't create an instance of vehicle. I'm instead, per the instructions, we're going to create 2 other classes. So this is going to be my superclass. So yay, vehicle superclass. Vehicle. It's an abstract class, but it's also and a superclass. Okay, yay. Okay, now we have our gas vehicle. So our gas vehicle extends vehicle. Remember, a special word, extends. Okay, so gas fuel extends vehicle, which means it gets you get all that stuff, right? All those attributes you get. So I'm going to have that, but I'm going to add another data member or another attribute, parameter, whatever you want to call it. We're going to do it a short of MPG, so miles per gallon. I'm going to create another constructor. I'm going to have it call it super, right? Always call the super first. So that's calling vehicle. And look at it. You can hover over things, and Eclipse is really nice and tells you what you're actually calling. So it's basically saying in the vehicle class, you're calling the vehicle constructor. Yay, just what I wanted. And then we have get and set. And then it says create a fuel type. So, and for the gas vehicle, it just says always return gas. Yay, always return gas. There we go. I don't even have to create an attribute for it, right? I'm just going to return gas because we know it's always gas. So I don't have to waste memory creating a string, just return gas. Now we have our alt fuel vehicle. So our alt fuel vehicle subclass as well. Maybe alt fuel vehicle is a subclass of vehicle. Just making little more information for you, right? So it's our subclass, it extends, but here we actually, depending, it's going to be alternative fuel vehicle, so the fuel type's going to change depending on the data in the spreadsheet. So we're going to keep a string, and then it also says to keep a range as well. So I have my constructor, it's going to call super, and then it's going to set default values for those two. Then we have our set and we have our gets. Okay? And set and gets, which means we're also going to have a set fuel type. So now both our gas vehicle and our alt fuel vehicle are subclasses of vehicle, and they both have a method called set fuel type. So we can create instances of it. Whereas in vehicle we couldn't. They both have get fuel type. Get fuel type. This is the important one. This method was an abstract method in the superclass. But we've implemented it now, right? Okay. So now let's go to, I don't know which one we want to do first. We have our EPA analyzer. It's our big one. It has our main in it. We know that we copied it from our other one, so it's a good starting point, but then from it, we're going to do a little bit different things. Instead of having an array of vehicles, we want to practice using an array list because we don't know how many we're going to have. Like, if I wanted to create an array of vehicles, what would I have had to do? I would have had to read all the data, figure out how many rows, how many vehicles I had, how much data I had, and then go back and individually add. With an array list, all I have to do is create my, say I'm going to have an array list of type vehicle, right? So I'm going to have an array of vehicle objects, and then I can just add them one by one while I'm reading each one. So I don't have to read it twice. That's a good thing, right? Much faster. So much better to use an array list. We can also add and delete things as well. So we needed this array list, but so you see the first thing we need to do is parse our data. So I'm going to go now into our data parser. So here's the data parser. One thing we need, you'll notice that Eclipse does this. Sometimes it'll close up things. Like here's all my imports, it'll close up things. So I'm going to use an array list. I'm going to use scanner because that's how I'm going to get the data. I'm also going to use file, and I'm going to use file not found exception. You actually can, quote unquote, cheat a little bit. You can actually add things along the way, and then Eclipse will tell you need to import it. You can also do things like this as well. So import java.util.star. And that will it will figure out what it needs to do, what it needs to add. So that's another little thing too as well. But will be the official way and list them all out, which ones we need. Okay, so this is a class, the data parser, but we wanted just to make one static method on it. So it's kind of like a math class, right? That, it's just doing some kind of function for us. So this is kind of the equivalent of a function, is we're having but it has to be in a class. So we have data parser in a class, and then we have this method called parse data file. Okay, parse data file is the name of the file. So it's public, because other classes want to call it. I mean, we could call it protected because it's in our one, but it's a static method. This is the return type. It looks kind of strange, but it's an array list. It's an array list of type vehicle, right? Our array list is holding vehicles, the vehicle class, objects of the vehicle class. So instances of the vehicle class. So that's that. This is the method name, and here we're going to pass in the path because that's what the instructions told us to pass in. So we got the file name in the EPA analyzer. Actually, it even asks you to make it a little bit more dynamic. I made mine really simple and just took the default. But data, I knew it was in data/vehicles.csv. Okay, so now we're going to parse our data. We're going to create an array list. Still need to call the constructor. This doesn't create individual vehicles. All it does is it creates the array list, gets things set up for us. I'm going to create a data file for my file, right? Just a file. And I'm going to pass in the path. And then I'm creating some other local variables here. Scanner, that's going to be my input line. Input array, so, I'm going to read it line by line. So input is that one line. My input array is going to be, for each line, I'm going to get all that data from the columns. right, in an array. So they're all going to be put in an array for me. And then I need a temp string too. So these are just things that I needed along the way, so I created variables for. Now we're going to do this data file, so I'm going to wrap the whole thing in a try-catch. Try-catch, file not found, right? Just in case it doesn't find the file. Let's make sure, we got it there. So we got that. So we're going to data file. Now, if you logged in the data has a header row, right? I'll open up the data again. The data has a header row, right, showing headers like U city A, U highway. So it's showing you information, V class, year, the year of the car, the car was made, all this kind of guzzler, true or false. There's all kinds of data in here, right? So, see, shoom, all kinds of data. This is the header row. I don't need that information. I don't want to parse that in and create an object of that, right? So I'm just doing input next row to skip the header row. Now I'm going to loop and say, while it has next, okay, I actually could have done the has next first, but that's besides the point. Skip the header row. I'm going to, while it has next, I'm going to get a line. So this basically says I have a temp string, and it is my line, right? This is one line of data, right? Just one line. But that one line is separated with commas. So I'm going through here and saying temp string dot split with the comma, because it's comma separated values, CSV. That means it's going to put it's going to put all that information into an array such that each element is one of those columns of information. So from there, it's much more easy to figure out what I want to do, how to get the data out. And the instructions gave you kind of what field it was in. It's really like the index of what it's in. Wasn't sure how to figure out what was a gas vehicle. I kind of went through the data, and I noticed that, there's different ways of doing it, but it says based on the 69th field. If you see the 69th field, it's all empty unless it has data saying what kind of fuel it is. That's the 69th. It's actually the BR. So this column here. So he just said 69th, but you can go here. So the ATV type, or is it, or one of these two, yeah. You can see there's diesel. So either one, you can, depending on what you want to do. This one has kind of the types of fuel, the E85, other things as well. But I thought this one kind of told me, this column here, told me, okay, it's a hybrid, or it's an FFV, different types, right? Hybrid, what's the FFV? It's flex fuel vehicle. Okay, so that kind of stuff. So you can see there, or CNG, all this stuff. So if it is blank, then that means if it's blank, I'm going to trim it, and if it's a blank, that means it's a gas vehicle. So I'm going to create an instance of car, which is a gas. So I'm going to create an instance of gas vehicle, and I'm going to just name it that variable car. So gas vehicle car equals new gas vehicle. Then for each of them, I'm going to set the make, model, and year, and MPG. And how I'm going to get that is I'm going to get it from here. The input array, and then we told you the index to use. So the make was in 46, the model was in 47, the year was in 63. So that kind of information was there. So that's how I'm doing it. Now to get the year we want it to be in a short. So once again, I'm going to use that parse, that short.parse short, the static method to get it. And you just need to make sure, oh, I forgot to put my exception here, but what was the exception again? We had a specific exception for it.
Do you need another person?
Go ahead, come in. I'm just recording myself, kind of going through things, but what was it? It was number format exception, I think. Number format exception. So, you can add in all the exceptions that you want to put in here. this says file not found. Maybe you want to say number format, problem, error, something like that. So do what you want to do. Maybe you want to throw these up, whatever you want to do. But we'll catch that and we'll parse it. Then once we've done that, so notice how we're creating a gas vehicle, right? A gas vehicle is based off of vehicle, right? It's a subclass of vehicle. So now I can go into my array list, and even though my array list is of type vehicle, which, right, we can never instantiate because it's an abstract class, we can add a gas vehicle to it because it's a subclass of it. So I can add my gas vehicle. Otherwise, if it's not the empty string, I'm going to say it's an alt fuel vehicle. So I'm going to create an instance of an alt fuel vehicle. I'm going to set the make, model, year, fuel type. There's different columns if you want to grab the fuel type. I just grabbed 69 again. And then I can also get this range, and then I'm going to add that vehicle. Okay? So that's kind of the key point, is even though I'm creating these objects, like in this case, I'm creating car is a gas vehicle, and in this case, it's an alt fuel vehicle, I can still add it to my array list because my array list is of type vehicle, and it's a superclass of both of them. Isn't that cool? It's great use of that. And then I have some exceptions, and then a finally to close the scanner. So now I have my EPA analyzer. We go in here. Remember that I just created this parse data file method, static method, in data parser, passing in the file name, the relative path and file name, and it's going to return to me, because that's what I had it return, is an array list of vehicles. So I get my array list of vehicles, and then I start my menu, get my menu, if whichever option I'm going to. So whatever option I have, for example, say I want a year, I'm going to ask the user to enter a year, and then I'm going to call the count by year. So we had to alter these as well, the count by year, count by make, count by model, and then we had to add count by fuel. So the count by year, very similar, except for here we're using an array list of vehicles. So I'm going to use an array list of vehicles. Remember, this array list, it's going to hold gas vehicles as well as alt fuel vehicles. I'm going to loop through it. This time I use the for each, right? The for each, really nice way of doing that, the for each loop. For each of my vehicles, get the year, check it against what they entered, increase the count, return the count. Make, very similar. We're just going to use the equals ignore case. Model equals ignore case. Fuel, same thing. We ask what kind of fuel. I didn't do all the error checking that was in the lab, but you can add that all in there, right? Seeing if it's gas, change it to all say gas, right? Because that's what we're expecting. We told our gas vehicle, right, to always return gas. So that's what I'm expecting. That's what I want to check against. So here in this guy here, we could make sure that the fuel, if it equals gasoline or gas, that we convert it to gas and then we check it against it. Or you can add more ifs if you want to as well, right? If else, check it against gasoline. So, so there I'm going to check that. I'm going to add the count and return. And there you go. We can count the number of gas vehicles we have, all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Kind of makes sense now that you see it, right? Okay, so if we run it, let's see, we'll run it. Welcome to the data analyzer. Please enter a menu item. So we know it, right? It loaded it. I could have put a little message saying, you know, loading data, but it did it quick. Let's see, for fuel type. So I'm gonna hit fuel type. Please enter a fuel type. I'm just gonna write gas because I know that's what I'm expecting. And it found 31,091 vehicles, gas vehicles. That's a lot of data, right? So it works. Yay. Yay, it works. So key things to remember is our just remembering the inheritance, understanding the inheritance, you're going to use inheritance, you know, you're going to use that. You can use like array lists, and if you have these classes that you want to keep, and if they have the same parent, right? They have the same superclass, then you can create an array list of those, right? I couldn't have called, I mean, I had to create that abstract method. Why did I have to create an abstract method in vehicles? Because I wanted to be able to do this here in the get fuel, right? I wanted to be able to say vehicle get fuel type. So that's why I had to create that abstract method. I didn't want to have to keep an array of gas vehicle. I didn't want to have an array list of gas vehicles and an array list of alt fuel vehicles. I wanted an array list of vehicles, right? But I wanted to be able to call get fuel type. So even though it's not implemented in vehicle, I implemented it in the subclasses. So I needed to make it abstract so it existed for this. That kind of makes sense? Yes.
No.
That's okay. So hopefully that makes more sense. Yes, I hope you have a great time in CS 201. Yay!
Okay.